All right, so the song of the month, we're talking about Electric Gypsy. And this song goes back actually quite a ways back to my Danger Danger days. As I recall, the riff kind of came about probably in about 1992 or 1993. I was living in Flushing, Queens, at 171st and Northern Avenue, living with Casey Schmidt, the keyboard player for Danger Danger, and his brother Carl, who actually was a great drummer. And we would do jam sessions at the Schmidt house, as we called it. I was living in the basement of this particular house. And sometimes we'd have jam sessions, sometimes just Carl and I, drums and guitar. But Casey also, man, wrote a bunch of great fusion tunes. He was quite a mini Moog soloist, you might say. And anyway, that's another story for another day. Maybe we'll release some of those tracks we did. It was a band called Shock. Anyway, I get off the beaten path here every now and then. But so anyway, there was a time where Carl and I were doing jam sessions in the afternoon when we had time. And this particular riff, the Electric Gypsy riff, kind of came about the same time I was reading a book about Jimi Hendrix called Electric Gypsy. And I was just learning about his life and his musical journey, so to speak. And so the riff kind of came at around that same time. So that's where I took the title. It just kind of made sense because it wasn't really meant to be a complete tribute to Jimmy, but it was certainly in that vein of that type of, kind of, R&B-ish kind of Curtis Mayfield, rhythmy kind of stuff. So there's a cassette recording somewhere of me and Carl jamming, and that was the kind of the origin of the tune. And so it was kind of in my back pocket for a while. And during my tenure with Danger Danger, I was still coming back to Texas. That band was based in New York. I would come back to Texas to work with Mike Dane and Mitch Marine, and we were kind of recording sporadically through my whole time in that band what I really considered to be demo tapes for what might become, my first solo record. It turns out most of those demo tapes turned out to be the actual songs we used on the record. But a couple of the very last songs recorded for what became my Ear Ecstasy CD were Farmer Says, Turn Away, and then Electric Gypsy. And I think they were all recorded on the same day. So this would have been probably back about 1994 at this point. And I brought Electric Gypsy in, and when I started showing it to Mike Dane, I knew it was a strong riff. I liked it a lot, but I kind of kept thinking maybe this is a vocal tune. Like, this has got a strong kind of poppy thing about it. Maybe I could put lyrics to it and could have some commercial potential. But Mike was pretty persuasive. It really stands on its own. It's a strong tune on its own. So I kind of have Mike to thank for that, because this has clearly been one of my favorite songs to play live, but it's been a fan favorite as well. I think it's been one of our most requested songs over time. And the song was pretty much completely written, except for maybe the little bridge section at the end of the solo where where it goes to F sharp minor to G. Mike came up with that little cool diminished passing chord, getting us back to that D major. So he's not credited as a writer, but he's definitely influential in the song and keeping it as an instrumental. So I have him to thank for that. Anyway, so that's the basic compositional memory that I have of it. And then again, that was one of the last tunes recorded for the Ear Ecstasy record. So I remember the day that I was going in to record Electric Gypsy. And I think at the time I was using a PV Classic 50 combo amp, which are really cool, actually. Very Fendery, old school sounding amplifiers. I still have one somewhere nearby. Anyway, but it had some rattling issues, so I had a buddy at a local music shop. The music shop was called the Brook Mays Pro Shop here in Dallas, which was a big chain at the time. And I had a friend named Steve Mueller that was working there, who now works with Mesa Boogie. But he was working there, and he offered to help me out. I think the cabinet was rattling a little bit. He says, "Yeah, swing by on the way. We'll tighten up the cabinet, and we'll send you on your way, and you go do the session." So when I get there, he had his own rig set up back in the guitar room, and I heard this tone. I went, "Oh my gosh, I need to hear what that is." And it was this VHT Pitbull combo, and I instantly recognized that's the sound I want for Electric Gypsy. It was just this kind of clean, slightly broken up tone. And we tweaked on my PV, but I heard Steve playing through this rig and asked if I could play through it. So essentially, of course he offered, but I stole the amp for the day. So I took the VHT to the studio, and I believe I used it on Electric Gypsy and Turnaway, and I don't remember using any pedals in front of it. It's a 3-channel 100-watt amp with EL34s, and so I used kind of the mid-gain channel as the cleanish, slightly broken up tone, and then just switched over to the lead channel for the lead sound when there's a very obvious tonal change there in the guitar solo, about 3/4 of the way through. So yeah, when I decided to get it out of storage. I did give Steve his amp back at that time, but I later bought a VHT Pitbull and used it occasionally in the studio, but just didn't become my go-to live amp. It was not long after that the Mesa Boogie Lone Star came to be, and of course that's been my main amp for all this time. But I got a VHT Pitbull out for the recording of the playthrough, and it worked great. And it was kind of cool to plug back into it and hear. It was definitely on this guitar too. This guitar would have been less than a year old because this was built in February of '94. And I don't have the exact date of our recording session for Electric Gypsy, but within 5 or 6 months. So the guitar was brand new, straight into the VHT, and then I plugged into it and I thought, there's the sound, this is great. So that's what you hear in our playthrough of Electric Gypsy. But when we came time to set up today to do the tutorial, it wasn't working. So I think that's why I never used the amp that much live, because it was known to be a little volatile. So they sound great while they're working. But so now I've gone back to my standard Lone Star setup. But that's my memory of the recording session. Again, it would have been with Rob Wexler at the helm, engineering and mixing as he always did. And it's Mitch Marine and Mike Dane. I think we did a couple of different takes of it, and I recut the guitar. But it's just guitar straight into the amp. We might have added some echo at the board, but that was it. Okay, so if you reference the original recording, you'll realize that there was a good amount of my early solo recordings that were actually tuned down a half step. I think after the first Danger Danger record, we started tuning down a half step for live, for the singer's consideration, so it wasn't so difficult on them every night. And there is something very cool about a guitar tuned down to E flat. It's got a certain resonance, a certain sound. But as time went on, I kind of started gravitating back to just playing in regular tuning A440. So the original recording, if you reference it, it will be in the half step down. But for the purposes of this tutorial, since everything else I'm doing is normal tuning, I thought it was important just to stay in that tuning. So we'll be in the key of D in the regular tuning for this, okay? So let's talk about this main riff. It's something that it was interesting for me to revisit the original recording, because as things tend to do, once you record it, you might vary from that over the years as you play it live. And that's certainly been the case even with just the actual riff itself, where when I listened to the original recording, it seemed that I was phrasing it a little differently. So let me play for you the intro riff as I play it now, and then I'll address the way it was originally played if you're interested in capturing that original inspiration. So it's starts with the open D string. So let's just go that far and talk about that. And that's where part of the difference is, where I think I was keeping the strings more open in the original version, where and that's not a bad sound, but these days I like to I'm giving it a little less duration of the low A, just for phrasing, to give it a little bit kind of a funkier feel, I think. Giving that a little space. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. The melody is just basically over, hitting the open string and then playing the melody on the string right underneath it. So. And with all these things that, as I break these techniques and these phrases down for you, please pay attention to the dynamics of what's happening within the line. Because that open D is you kind of hear that, I'm swelling into that main melody of the F sharp. Okay, and the same thing with the A. open A string, and I'm pivoting on the A string. I'm hitting that F sharp, but it's really kind of muted and just meant more as a rhythmic punctuation than actual note value. And then there's just a big rhythmic chunk. I think it's on a downstroke. Play the whole phrase so I get it right for you. So there's a lot of dampening going on here. I'm getting the full force of all 6 strings. I'm going to practice doing that for a minute. Imagine that you're doing the intro to Are You Experienced? So I'm hitting all 6 strings as I'm letting that melody come out. I'm upstroking and getting the hammer on. Like with all this, there's excellent studies within the phrases to try to get it right. Okay, so, and I've heard a lot of people play this on YouTube, and I'm so flattered that people take the time to learn this and other tunes. But a lot of it is in the detail. What I don't hear happening is that kind of rhythmic punctuation and groove with it, and a lot of that is what I'm kind of divulging to you here is that kind of the accents and flow of dynamic within the line. And that has so much to do with the power that Jimmy had, and then later, you know, guys like Stevie Ray that certainly got a lot from Jimmy. You know, they were great rhythm guitar players. There was so much time and rhythm happening, even if they're doing something that's more of a solo feature, those elements are going to be there, that kind of groove and that kind of time. And there, it's a B minor chord. I'm grabbing the B with my thumb. Rod Stewart track, actually. But you'll get that a lot in Jimmy's playing, and of course, a lot of guys that came after him. That next chord is G. You know, he would ornament a lot of his chords just by playing, you know, notes above it that were either in the scale or diatonically, you know, correct. So I'm just kind of applying some of that vibe to that chord. And now I'm on that G major chord. So I'm kind of just building up the G major or E minor pentatonic. You know, that's the E minor is the same as the G major because the relative major minor. And then coming out of that G, it's kind of riffing back into E major. So, hammer on. Let's just write out a D major pentatonic. Right? And that is the basic chord progression of the song. That's an ongoing theme throughout, where it's D major, A major, B minor, G major. very, very common chord progression you'll hear in just so many great pop tunes. U2 uses it a lot, and it's just, I don't know, it's straight ahead, but I love things like that. And so just kind of ornamenting it in a way that, you know, sounds more like you. So let me play the whole riff one more time, keeping some of these things in mind that I'm talking about. The dynamic, the rhythmic punctuation, you know, the muted notes, getting single notes to come out even though I'm hitting. If I was just playing a single. That's cool too at the right time, but. So let's do the riff one more time slowly here. Full volume. I just caught myself. There's an open A. And again, it's just kind of it's almost a non-note, but I'm hitting that open A string before the E and G. One more time. And I'll play it differently every time. There I kind of raked into it. Okay. Anyway, that's the basic riff. Okay, so the riff happens on its own, of course, a couple of times at the front, and the band comes in. And within that second statement of what is really the main riff or melody, I punctuate it with a little bit of a slippy, slidey, bluesy lick. So I'll attempt to explain that and play that for you. So now we're on the second time through the riff. So. Which sets us up for the first melodic verse, right? So there's just that lick. I guess in playing it, I thought, well, if I just play the same thing I played in the intro, it might get a little stale by that point. The band's in. Let me give it a little bit more energy. And so there's this connecting lick over the B minor. So it's a same riff on the D, the A, B minor, over the G. Okay, a little difficult for me to break this down, but at least I've taken the time to figure out it comes on the end of one. And then once beat 2 happens, it's kind of a descending bluesy triplet. So let me see if I can slow it down so you can kind of get the mechanics of what's happening. So I get to the B minor. 1. Oh, 1. It's hard for me to slow down. Oh, 1. So. Try that one more time, okay? And space. So I get into it on at the end of the B minor. G. And again, kind of hard for me to analyze exactly what's happening, but you can obviously consult the awesome Alexander transcription because he will have gotten it accurate there. So it's just starting on the bending up the B, on the A and a 1, 1, and then kind of into just that D major pentatonic. That's it. All right, so let's move on to the verse. So this first verse, if you want to call it that, is essentially relying on artificial harmonics. I've got I've got a melody that I'm playing, but I'm not picking it traditionally. I'm actually tapping each note as it happens exactly 12 frets above. So it's the same kind of concept of hitting an open harmonic, but if you fret a note here 12 frets above, you can hit that note. It's a tapping, but it's also more of a slapping because it's not really, you're not fretting the note as much as, you know, kind of chiming it in that way. But the actual slapping of it is the actual articulation and the touching and letting go to achieve that higher harmonic. So to practice this, I mean, obviously I'm going to show you the melody, but you can make an exercise out of it by just taking, the pentatonic shape of D major, and mirroring exactly what you're doing, just to get used to that, the visualization. And it's really pretty easy because you just have to imagine yourself playing 2 octaves at the same time, or just really just focusing on and with anything else, it's going to be pretty important to hone your dampening skills because of the distortion and extraneous noise that can happen. And I'm still, even on the record and live, lots of noises happen. I'm by no means perfect or great at it, but that's the general technique involved. And I'll also say that you can hear me at the end of that intro. I go to the bridge pickup because the brighter tone will allow more of that harmonic to come out. You can do it on the neck, like Eddie might have played it. Whatever that intro was, that beautiful tapping harmonic. And I'm sure that's where I first heard it, was Eddie Van Halen on Women in Love off of Van Halen, is that Van Halen 2, I think? Anyway, but for my own purposes, I decided that, they tend to come out a little stronger on the bridge pickup. And so let's dig into that. Okay, so I've switched to the bridge pickup. And again, this melody is going to follow the same chord progression. D major, A major, B minor, G major. So the first phrase starts 3, 4. Okay. Now I'm basically going from the root and bending up a whole step. And then the way I re-articulate it. So could have played it that way, but there's that C sharp to D, then releasing to C sharp. So that's giving us the flavor of that chord. It's the C sharp. It's the third of A major. So you hear that harmony going by. 1, 2, 3. Ending up on the B note, that third of that G chord. So essentially staying within the D major pentatonic, but occasionally slipping off for that C sharp, of course, to get the third of that A chord. And I'm not tapping or whatever you want to call slapping every note. I'm hammering on there, and there is. So for 4 notes, I'm hitting it twice. Each time I'm hammering onto that F sharp. Something like that. So the whole phrase. And down. down to that low F sharp. And again, that's a flavor I'm going to want to hear. I'm going to want to hear the third of that D major chord. Kind of stretching out a little bit from the original melody, which was, but I think on the playthrough I gave a little bit extra. So I just kind of went up the scale there of D major in time to get down to that C sharp over the A chord, right? Same move there again, where I'm tapping a note, hammering, tapping a note. So, just going right up the scale. I'm bending up to that F sharp, the third again. And then bending further up to the G for a little bit of tension release. So. Another hammer on there. Sometimes I'll re-articulate with another slapping harmonic, or sometimes I'll just re-articulate with the way that I bend. And there I am, also all hands on deck. Whatever I can use, whatever appendage or digit available to mute, you'll see me reach up on the neck a lot. And it's just to kind of further support, hopefully, the note that I want to come out, and so there's no extraneous noise with it. Now the next phrase, sometimes I'll bend if I'm feeling like I can be accurate, but sometimes I'll bail and just fret the note. But that next part of the melody is, because see, I get a lot of noise sometimes. Either way, that's the melody, but sometimes I'll bend a. Part of the punctuation of that phrase is just how I'm choosing to cut the note off with my left hand. I'm not muting it here, but I'm in. If I sustained it, I'm letting off the string as I get to the. So. That's a nice re-articulation there too. So there's, again, multiple exercises here. So. One way I did it bending, one way I did it just kind of muting. Down to that C sharp. Okay, that's a nice phrase at the way I'm wrapping it up there, because I kind of imply a dominant chord before the B minor. So after I've gone down to the C sharp of the A, the next chord is coming up is B minor. But a lot of times in jazz or any type of music, you can always imply or insert what would be a dominant chord of that next chord to set it up. And that's what I've just implied melodically. I don't remember what Mike does on the bass, but chances are he might have stayed on the A, or he could have gone chromatically up to the B. And what that chromatic note implies is a first inversion F sharp dominant chord, or really pretty compositional device that I use in a lot of my songs, but I'll also imply it sometimes in my melodic choice. So after I've hit that C sharp, but just by hinting at that A sharp leading into the B, you can kind of, I hear, at least in my own mind melodically, I'm hearing that 5 chord. So then I end up with just a simple melody of the G to F sharp. So one more time on that phrase. And that's a nice slide. What do I do there? That's it. So there's a bend and a slide that's pretty interesting. So, then we get into a very Hendrixy bridge, B section. Okay, so coming out of that first melodic verse section into the bridge, now I play the last phrase. I go from the bridge pickup to the neck pickup and give just a rhythmic kind of setting up the downbeat of this bridge, and it's very much a very Hendrixy chordal type of section, going from E minor to C, E minor to C. It does it a couple times, and then there's a riff. So it's very straight ahead, E minor to C, implied C7 because of a melodic choice I make halfway through it. I'll show that to you. Let's dig into the chords. So 1, 2. So it's just a nice E5. And then it's kind of a D major. I think that's what it is. I'm just basically getting the E power chord. And then a D major triad going up to adding the G so it turns it into kind of an E minor 7. Because Mike on the bass will be cranking on that E. And there we go, just the A, D, and G string. That's where the C7 comes in, because I give it a very Hendrixy, very bluesy, but sliding kind of in the C major pentatonic. Just a real common move in that Curtis Mayfield Hendrix vernacular. And there I give it even more emphasis after the C. Just a unison bend all the way there, B flat on the high E string, and bending from the A flat below it on the B string. And I'll start as a pre-bend, so you don't really hear it. So. Yeah. I guess you do hear the pre-bend because I'm sliding into it. it's just a little single note riff that Mike doubles me on. So yeah, just open E. So the first riff kind of outlines a E minor 7, because you got the notes B and D, then a G major. Just a triad sliding from the 9, A, kind of an A7, kind of cheesy really. And I'm pulling off on that. So the C sharp to A, just very basic outline of that A7 chord. So one more time on the whole B section or bridge, whatever you want to call it, the middle section in E, and it's reliant completely on that rhythm always going kind of vibe. Then we're into the next solo section.